perpetual night. That's what we are headed for. Where every heart melts as the black forces of chaos consume us all. But we have a shot. One arrow of deliverance. I am Rook, High Archer of the Grey Elves. And these are the trials of Strife.
Strife, the second generation MOBA, the Dota and League killer you've never heard of. I mean, you quite literally may have never heard of it, because it's hidden on Steam and all talk about the game has essentially gone dark in the past 6 years. But you probably have heard of Heroes of Newerth. Why do I mention this? It's made by the same people. Not many companies can boast 2 MOBAs on their resume. Back in the day, if you were a regular MOBA enjoyer, you were either playing Han, League, or Dota. You only had 3 choices. I mean, there was a 4th choice, that being Avalon Heroes, but I'll let some gameplay speak for itself. Absolutely riveting. So did this bold move pay off for S2 to sell their game and create an entirely new one called Strife? A game they claimed to be the second generation MOBA. Well, that's what I'm here to find out, so welcome to the first episode of Worst MOBA Ever, a series inspired by none other than the great Joshua Strife Hayes, who toils in the horrendous experiences of playing some of the worst MMOs imaginable so we don't have to. A fitting title for a game as we take our first venture into the unknown, as I journey to find the worst MOBA in existence, and as an added bonus within this video, I promise you 2 fun facts about League and Dota that you did not know. Also, that Dota 2 is canonically in the same universe as Final Fantasy X. While the game downloads, which is only 2 GB, I decided to visit their Steam page, website, and social pages. The Steam page was hard to find, as you had to get the direct URL, as it is now otherwise hidden at the request of the developers. The website treats me to 3 options. Let's learn more. Upon clicking learn more, I'm redirected to a loud video that when I try to pause, it just keeps unpausing. So I decide the next best thing would be to mute it. I cannot mute it either. Good start. It also claims the open beta is live, but this game has been in development since 2015 as far as I know, so this may fundamentally be the longest recorded open beta in the history of MOBAs. Congratulations! The third option takes me to a bunch of defunct links that no longer work, and I get to look at whatever the hell this thing is. Surprisingly though, the guide works. On the guide, they claim the game's mechanics are designed to reduce toxicity, create more action, reduce tedium, and allow us to play the game intuitively and how we want. That is a lot to claim a game can do on its own. We'll have to see if that's actually true. However, already, this is a contradiction. If we're allowed to play how we want, then what if I want to use my hypercarry ADC to support? This would effectively put my team at a disadvantage and be toxic, if not inspire toxicity from my team. I would only assume. But what do I know? This is a second generation MOBA. Another issue I'm immediately presented with is the shared last hit gold system. This will come up later in my video why this doesn't work, so remember this. They also state we get out of combat regeneration, a unique system to this MOBA actually. I have no comment on this, we'll just have to see how it plays out. The rest of these things listed here are all available in either Dota 2 or League now in some form. This is most likely an outdated guide, but let's go over them briefly because why not? Dota 2 has self-couriers, and wards cost nothing in either game, granted a small price for detection in Dota 2. League has a Kratos equivalent in the form of a Rift Herald. Versatile Heroes is just a lie, we've already gone over this. And Power? Now, you're telling me, to appeal to casual gamers, you diluted your stats into a single power attribute. That's actually a smart idea, and games like Dota 2 and League have only continued to fork their stats into more refined areas because they hate casual gamers. It couldn't possibly have anything to do with a single stat being hard to balance. You might be onto something over their S2 games, I'm totally not being sarcastic. Regardless though, someone should check this list in 2024. Lastly, they say at the bottom the max level is only 15, I assume again because 18 and 30 are far too high a number for the casual gamer to count to, these numbers being the max levels in League and Dota respectively. Also, there's no denying creeps. This is quite a middle finger to Dota specifically, but respectable nonetheless. Dota 2 is in fact a game that deserves a middle finger for its difficulty. Also, it says you lose no gold when you die, probably because losing gold sucks and this is a casual game, so they don't want your feelings to get hurt. How nice of them. And sticking to the theme of the casual gamer can't handle large numbers, they remove larger recipe combinations because it's hard to design a UI that shows recipe combinations intuitively. And a weird one, but destroying the equivalent of barracks or inhibitors only gives gold in no empowered minions. I'm not quite sure how this appeals to casual gamers, but it does cause a huge issue which I will show later in the video. Lastly, looking at their socials, they make attempts to redirect you into their Facebook page and content. Remember, this was in 2017, mind you. I'm not sure what they were thinking with this. However, all of these links fell, and I can only assume it's because they deleted the page. That was probably for the better. Before I leave the Twitter though, I noticed this post a bit further down. It's a link to their official weekly casted tournament. This seems rather interesting. I love when games go out of their way to have a weekly esports dedicated tournament. It's really good, and it helps stimulate the player base and the competitiveness of it. Obviously, it needs to be more regulated, but if they're able to pull it off, it's a great thing to have. So let's go ahead and check it out.
Sure, I believe I can't really see what's back there. It's also in the wall, so we'll get a day on that.
I just see a little tail coming out. I don't know what it is. What has a pink tail? Is it Mystic? It might be Mystic.
Wow. So yes, their official streamed weekly tournament is just 2 people with 0 noise canceling, just clicking, breathing, and typing into their microphones. The quality of the broadcasters is not something I will take potshots at here, as everybody has to start somewhere, but the mic quality, that is completely fair game in 2017 at the time of their recording. Did not a single person over at S2 Games do even a modicum of quality control? If it was my company and I had 2 willing broadcasters eager to set this up and perform on our behalf, I would have more than sent them 2 professional $100 mics and wrote it off as a business expense. Let me remind you, if you think I'm being too harsh, this game claims to be the 2nd generation of MOBAs, a game that would compete with League and Dota. The quality control here is insulting at best, and it's not a good sign as we get ready to play this. So with the game done downloading, let's get into it. And
welcome to the Trials of
oh my
I
god!
am Lexicon, one of 5 living keepers
Before
of
I'm
the
even
code.
able to make my account, I'm jump scared by a balding Garen. I've been met with loud launchers before, but this one takes the cake. Shitting my pants was not on my list of things to do when I started this game. After this, I spent an unexaggerated 2 minutes fighting the UI design to find an acceptable name. What do I mean by this? Well, Phoenix D Still was deemed inappropriate. That is something I already know, but you don't get to tell me that, game. So I tried various names, but the UI never told me the reason after the first time. So I was clueless as to why they weren't working or if it was even trying the name out. Eventually it tells me login failed and oh, it appears Joshua isn't allowed to play this game. Sorry pal, even more reason for me to review this one for the team. I got you. After an arduous battle to find an acceptable name, I was able to get into the launcher with Bongo Bananarama. Amazing.
Well met, each of our chosen.
Midlife Crisis Garen jump scares us once again, and get used to this, he keeps popping up whether you want him to or not. The voice acting, I will say though, is actually quite good, and it gives me a sort of action 80s hero vibe. I'm digging it despite how terrifying he is. We then get thrown into a sort of tutorial story mode. This is standard for MOBAs, so no real gripe here, as it's hard to say what makes a good tutorial for a MOBA. These little tutorials are twofold in the sense that they casually teach us basic mechanics while also setting us up to be invested in the characters and world presented. The animations and voice acting for this little story, again, as with Mr. Clean Garen, are really well done, and I'm taken in for a solid minute.
I'm Caprice, terror on the high seas of Lyrie. On a recent raid at Dire Cove, I intercepted a message meant for some valiant warrior type. It was an invitation to the trials of Strife. It appears the Keepers are raising an army. Normally not my thing, but where there's conquest, there's gold, and I want it. So I buried my treasure, marooned my crew, and burned my ship. I kept the anchor. Sentimental about these things. And now, who knows what horizons lay before me? Prepare yourselves, Keepers. Caprice is coming to the trials of Strife.
My first thoughts upon getting in and walking around, I'm speechless. It gives me old Warcraft 3 vibes, like the old Rexar campaign I played growing up as a kid. Props to those who know what I'm talking about, which makes sense considering this is the same team that again made Han. A game that was essentially a glorified Warcraft 3 custom game in a new engine. Yeah, I said it. Fight me. 1v1 me mid. Jokes aside, I am being genuine. This whole tutorial left me feeling incredibly nostalgic. It also managed to teach me everything in a very casual and fun way. They nailed it here. I do want to point one thing out for us to remember later though. This merchant, who is voiced amazingly and adds to the charm of this whole scene, he's a well-designed addition. It would be a shame if they never used him again, not even for the shop, but surely they wouldn't do something like that. When they finally introduced camera settings and mechanics, I decided to look into the settings and I met with what can only be described as the settings in a child's game. It's clear they took inspiration from League here, but it's a bit overkill. Everything from the overly sized icons and goofy offbeat color scheme, the font itself looks like the cousin of Comic Sans, that cousin being the one you see at family dinner with the gimp eye that you politely smile at when they force eye contact with you with their one good eye. In the camera settings, what catches my eye is a edge scroll setting stating it would be very useful on touchscreen devices, and as far as I'm aware, this game has never seen the light of day on a tablet, but I don't know. So maybe that was a stretch goal they never quite reached. It would explain the goofy kids menu. Just throw on Strife for your kids on the tablet and let them GG go next their way through their development years. After this short tutorial, I'm finally ready to play my first match, except I'm not. It's time for a second tutorial. I guess everything couldn't be explained in the first one. Okay, well, here we go again. This time, we get to storm the Alchemist Tower with the Avatar, formerly known as Garen. And wait a second, is his name actually Lexi Khan? I could easily mistake that for a stripper's name, but that aside, is it supposed to be a play on the word lexicon mixed with con? Hold on here. Okay, the standard textbook definition of Khan is a title given to rulers and officials in Central Asia, Afghanistan, and certain other Muslim countries, or any of the successors of Genghis Khan, supreme rulers of the Turkish Tatar and Mongol peoples and emperors of China in the Middle Ages. Does this play on words imply he is royalty from Central Asia? Does this game take place on Earth? Who are you really, Lexicon, and what nights are you at the strip club asking for a friend? This raises so many questions, but let's not get distracted from the task at hand. Heading out with His Highness, we are tasked with taking down a tower in an epic push down this small lane, and I want to stop here and point out how cool this enemy looks. However, that is where the cool stops. He is sadly used as nothing more than an extra mob next to the tower. He does appear to be a hero, but he says nothing, uses no abilities, and just dies a pathetic death to the might of my anchor, because I am a pro MOBA player. He even has a cool little death animation. See how he curls up like a spider? Nice attention to detail here. Oh, and remember him. As a matter of fact, remember all of the unique characters we see during this tutorial, including the merchant from the first tutorial. Why? You'll see after this tutorial. If there isn't a third tutorial, that is. We then go and clap some cheeks to get access to the Grape Ape, and it's only just now that the nostalgia rose-tinted glasses have worn off that I noticed something off about the NPC talk boxes. Look and see if you notice it.
So, can you teach me that move sometime?
Let's get back to camp.
That's right, the developers couldn't even be bothered to properly set the animation of the NPC before it appears. So when the box pops up, you see them jolt into position. It's minor, but that's enough that most players would notice it. This jank adds up when trying a game for the first time. It's not game-breaking, but it's there, and we do notice it. Moving on, we siege the Alchemist Tower once more, but with Grape Ape in tow. However, now he's a white ape. What happened to the purple ape? This isn't who we saved. Setting aside the discrepancy, we push into the Alchemist Tower where we're met with a random Jack and Daxter character who runs off conveniently into his escape portal, and middle-aged Garen decides he wants to go after the Alchemist while leaving us to fight legally distinct, not Bane. This fight against legally distinct, not Bane, ends up keeping me on my toes and is well made. I actually forget I'm playing a MOBA at this point, if I'm being honest, because of how well made this whole scenario has been. Afterwards, Aros is now the one trying to jump scare us. I don't know who she is, but she has a far calmer voice that sounds kind of like a phone operator. Press 1 to continue.
These pets will grow in power and aid you in combat.
They explain the pet system, and I have my first big complaint about a system League phased out a long time ago. I complain about this in any competitive game, so it's not a MOBA specific issue. This pet system is amazing, but locking game-changing features behind grinding in a competitive game is never a good idea. I want to go on a bit of a tangent here. If you're a PvP gamer and you have ranked or competitive play, don't lock features behind levels or purchased points. What I mean by this is League used to have a rune system where you could put together pages full of massive stat boosting runes. A level 1 character would have access to none of this and would need to spend hours unlocking them, if not days or weeks. League also used to lock its talent pages behind skill points, which you earned 1 skill point per account level. Meaning if you combine the rune system plus this talent system, the difference in power level from a level 1 player to a level 30 player was massive. It just wasn't fun for new players. This is why they changed the system, presumably. Now these pets aren't too game changing, but having no access to some of the better ones and logging them behind a point system seems ridiculous. Especially when you tell me I can play how I want. It's not playing how I want. It's playing the way I'm limited to playing until I've played enough that I can afford another pet to have one more option on how to play. I mean, some of these pets genuinely seem geared towards playstyles I would very much enjoy playing. This system fundamentally serves only to make it harder for new players to get into the game. It's bad and you should feel bad for doing it, but other games have it a lot worse, so this isn't as bad as it could be. Anyways, I chose the turtle because I have a turtle in real life. His name is Steve, short for Steve Harrington. This is a picture of Steve the turtle. Say hi to Steve, everybody. We finally get redirected into going to our very first bot match. Let's see how well part 1 and part 2 of the tutorials prepared us. As we get into our first match, let's look at our choices and check out the entire roster in terms of originality, and don't bite my head off here. I understand there's only so much room for originality as more MOBAs pop up, but you'll see in a second how some of these designs teeter on being a bit far too inspired from other characters. I'll start with the ones who have genuinely unique and amazing designs, the ones that stand out to me personally. We've got Buford, a swamp-loving toad with a hard southern accent. The design isn't something we haven't seen before in other games, but in this setting, he just fits. Moxie, a superhero cat who has the single best skin I've ever seen in a MOBA. A literal cat wizard. That is beyond epic. Rook, who just looks simply badass. And lastly, I regret showing this, but Chester. For some reason, his face is drawn hyper-realistic compared to every other character in the game, plus it looks like he might have made his way onto a few lists in several states. But nonetheless, he is a unique individual. As far as sketchy designs go though, there are a few. We've got Not Flynn from How to Train Your Dragon, or Not Aragon, pick your poison. Then we have Not Sniper from Dota 2, a dwarven shooter, as well as Not Heimerdinger from League, Not Twitch from League. At this point, if you're mad at me, that is fine. I'll concede that the designs aren't exactly spot on to their counterparts, but this is inexcusable. You cannot convince me this isn't inspired directly by techies from Dota 2. I would sooner eat my own foot. Despite all these great and less great characters, they at least had the decency to not rip off Wukong, a nearly 500-year-old character from the 16th century tale Journey to the West, and instead opted to give us Gokong. Of all the things, I swear, why wouldn't you just call him Wukong? I had to Google this before you sweaty little keyboard warriors die from a heart palpitation and finish typing your comment. It appears as though Gokong is in fact a correct name for him in certain languages, but let's be honest, besides DBZ using the name Goku, who calls Wukong or the Monkey King Gokong? You just wanted to be different. That's okay though. This is the second generation of MOBAs after all. Anyways, we've stayed on heroes a bit too long, but one last thing, I swear, and it's a nitpick, so hate on me if you want, but some of the characters' portraits are just completely different from the background art and model. Almost all of them actually are. When all you would have had to have done was crop the face in the background picture, edit it a little bit, and put it in as a portrait, which they did do for some of them, but not all of them. Why the inconsistency here? It's so minor, I don't get it. I mean, Lady Tinder quite literally has a different profile picture than what she looks like in game. Her hair is blue. Oh, wait, I see what you guys did here. She's literally catfishing us on Tinder. I get it. Alright, sorry for nitpicking, onto the actual game. I decided to choose the forearm gunslinger from the second tutorial if you remember him, since he looked incredibly interesting, except I can't. He isn't in the game. He is not a character I can choose, nor is the Bane character or the Mad Alchemist, 3 established characters not added to the game. I would be okay with this, except they've clearly been releasing new characters, but haven't released characters they already have the models and animations for. Why even show me this nameless Spider-Mech gunslinger if I can't play as him? Upset like the little kid I am, I decide to pick Ace because he's really cool. No? Okay. Getting into the match, the first thing I notice, which if you remember me pointing this out, is that there's no merchant. We can press B to open the shop, but the merchant again, who is established as a character in the first tutorial, isn't here. In Dota 2 or League, they have an established shop character in the base. Strife, however, where they literally again have a model and animations, and this time even voices, they just don't use him. He was an amazing voice character. He would welcome you every time you press B. Why fail to add this charm? I have no clue. It doesn't fundamentally break the game, but again, the little things. Of course, it is a second generation MOBA, so what do I know? Going in, I noticed something immediately off with my character. Let's see if you guys notice it. Do you see it? What could possibly be off here? Think hard about it. I'm punching with my fist while I am quite literally holding a massive axe. Why? If you have an axe, use it. Why, for the love of God, are you punching everything? This isn't the only weird choice of models. The Siege minion, for instance, has 2 rockets. So pop quiz here. What do you think he will do with these 2 rockets? If you answered fire at the enemy, you would only be 50% correct, as what he does is fire one, reload it, and never fires the second one. Why does he have 2? What is the purpose of the second rocket if only the first rocket is used and reloaded? Does the second rocket exist purely to drive us insane? Is it psychological warfare, or is it deeper than that? Does he take pity on us and never uses the second rocket? Does he not deem us worthy of his second rocket? We may never know. Moving on, besides the units and models, the actual map design is nice. Each and every little spot is cute, and the jungle mobs look amazing. I forgot to mention, Strife uses both elevation like Dota 2 and bushes from League. I actually really like this a lot, and it adds a serious amount of depth to the planning and danger of going through the map. Strife does a good thing here, surprisingly. Actually something I would expect from a second generation MOBA. Not sarcastic. Oh, and remember when I mentioned the shared gold system? Well, here it is in play. I am doing all of the last hitting, and just by existing in my lane, this little nerd here is siphoning all of my gold. This applies to hero kills as well. There are no checks and balances put in place outside of, am I near the kill? If so, yes, put that unit in the list of people to split the gold with. This system eliminates people arguing about last hits, but introduces arguing about being in the lane. How is this supposed to remove toxicity and help aim the game towards casuals? You've eliminated one problem, but you've created another one. Around 8 minutes, the whole gang decides to take down Roshan or Baron Nashur, depending on if you play Dota or League. And since I promised fun facts, did you know League of Legends Baron Nashur is an anagram of Roshan? See? Neat, isn't it? The more you know. Stick around though for fun fact number 2, where I prove Dota 2 is in the same universe as Final Fantasy X. Back to the review. The boss takes control of my camera and forces me to acknowledge their choice to fight the boss. If only Dota 2 or League had this feature every time I wanted to kill the map boss, maybe more people would be inclined to help. I am aware this is just a tutorial feature though, but for some reason the devs messed up here. Because even though the cutscene pauses the entire map, the timer up top is still ticking. This happens again later. I will say again, even if you're tired of hearing me say it, it's the little things. They really do add up. Remember, this game claims to be a second generation MOBA that would stand next to Dota or League. Before we end the match, I want to compliment the developers on the awesome original designs of these towers. Rotating cannon tower equals awesome, and nobody can argue against that. Also, the base towers are literal eels in jars. I'm sure PETA wouldn't be happy, but the design itself is sick as hell. Also, they have this regenerating shield, which makes up for the fact that they don't regenerate, I guess. And when it breaks, it actually affects the center of the base. Look here and I'll show you what I mean. It causes a huge ripple effect that breaks a side of the core. This is visually amazing and I love it. It's literally a showcase of how talented this development team is. This, however, is offset again by a game-breaking mechanic. Once we get to the nexus or center of the base, it starts firing off massive damage blasts at us and makes it nearly impossible to fight. Without the giant grape ape disabling its blast, the enemy team can turtle next to it quite effectively, making it hard to end the game without Kratos. If there was only some kind of super minion or siege unit that was here to push with. Oh well, I do enjoy all this extra gold I got from killing the inhibitors in barracks. I am in no way being sarcastic. Again, these are bots holding me off. If it was actually competent players, I would venture to guess it would be next to impossible to get through this, resulting in some long drawn out games, not to mention how short the respawn times are. You got around 10 to 20 seconds after killing the team or a player. That's if you manage to wipe all of them. If one or two stays alive and they have any form of CC or wave clear, it's gonna make it hard to fight or push this tower. This, of course, is all speculation, and you should take it 100% super seriously because I am a MOBA master, and also I am 100% of this game's player base, so my opinion is correct and you are wrong. After we painstakingly managed to end the game, we're met with an amazing victory screen of the building blowing up, an epic after-game scene with a breakdown of all the stats for the match, except that is not what we get. Instead, we got this.
Got it. Okay.
Yeah, Sadly, after the game ends, you just sit there silently for 30 seconds, and I already know you're sick of hearing this. But guys, it's the little things. So after this match, I've seen all Strife has to offer, and wait, what is that? Adventure Mode, Child of Dawn Episode 1. What could we possibly lose from checking this out? I am intrigued at a potential PvE mode in a MOBA. Wow. I'm genuinely impressed. This loading screen is visually gorgeous. Where the hell was this during my matches or first hour of playing? Instead, I got a Windows tropical background with various art styles of heads and MS Paint icons with tooltips. You guys were hiding this level of artistic detail in a side mode? You've got to be kidding me. We then get treated to a peculiar cinematic that throws so much at us in under a minute. So, Father Garrett is meeting with his ally the king, but apparently his weapon is sentient and narrates the story. The weapon then gives child delivering wine a fever dream of a vision, causing him to drop the wine, and I have to pause here. As an edit, I get to see this scene, and I can't help but laugh at the other horrific look on Grandpa Garen's face and the king here, just looking so like, what the hell? It's great. This is great. The scene then fades out, and with no questions answered or explanations given, we are locked in a dungeon, presumably for being put to death for spilling the wine. A bit of a jump here, and possibly a bit much for a simple mistake, but it is medieval accurate if the king was a righteous. This so far is really ominous, and again giving me Warcraft 3 story vibes. I really enjoy this. I can't believe this was tucked away in a small corner of the game. Also, see if you catch this little mistake here.
Oh, it smells horrible in here.
Did you hear it?
Oh, it smells horrible in here.
They forgot to replace the ugh before the dialogue line with the actual voice actor, or they used the wrong file here. Our character turns into a grown adult for a split second, and this time, I'm not even going to say it. You already know what I want to say. Exploring further, I'm impressed even more. The talent of the studio shines brightly here. We're met with some quality voice acting by some guards, and we engage in a stealth section.
This place gives me the creeps.
We can toss these wine bottles at guards to inoculate them or hide in these barrels to remain unseen. We then get caught by the executioner, but immediately saved by a well-voiced badass, one of these characters that I actually thought had a very unique and cool design, Rook. We even get to play as him in the next section. You can grapple to these spots, we engage the enemies in the room, and they actually have mechanics programmed in. The shield enemies will block your arrows and you have to zip behind them to finish them off. After this fight, we get met with a timing challenge, nearly getting past these flaming balls, and at the end we get to blow it up with a nice little cinematic. We actually get treated to a few nice little cinematics up until we reach this room. I'm sure none of these knights come to life, and there is a mage. They are definitely coming to life, and I'm okay with it, because it's hitting a very bias I have for nostalgic theming. Rook then gives us a sword, and we fight off enemies until we start our fight against this pompous mage. The animations here and the voice acting again are all top notch. This whole scenario has been a treat. After clapping this wizard's magical cheeks, we're put into the final cinematic battle against none other than the executioner himself. I actually struggle here. I don't know if it would have reset as I didn't die, again because I am a pro mobile elite gamer. During the fight, as his HP gets lower, he enters different phases where he incorporates different mechanics.
In the ground!
They put so much work into this boss fight, it's simply amazing.
You will die at my hands!
After the fight, cue cinematic, and we get out.
Good, you found the stone. Quickly now. Dawn is breaking.
These rewards at the end, by the way, I don't get them. For some reason it would appear it just didn't think I deserved them. No clue why, but just another small bit of jank to add to the list. All in all though, That was a pleasant side mission. I actually, again, as with the tutorial, forgot that I was playing a MOBA for a solid 20 minutes. That's right, it was 20 minutes worth of content probably thrown together as simply promotional material. So at this point, I think I've seen all Strife has to offer, and now it is time I follow through on my promise of fun fact number 2, where I prove Dota 2 is canonically in the same universe as Final Fantasy X. How? Well, this is Phantom Lancer, a character in Dota 2 carried over from Dota 1. In Dota 1, however, this was his model. His model was Grom Hellscream, with a skin applied to it. Are you following me, guys? That skin was none other than Kamari Ranzo, meaning that Phantom Lancer in Dota 2 is technically a version of Kamari Ranzo, thus linking the two games indisputably. You're welcome for forever being burdened with this knowledge every time you start up a match of Dota. But back to the review. Strife in short shows what happens when you take a talented team who is good at doing one thing and then have them do something completely different. What you get is a well-made game without any direction. I mean, look at previous titles and their scores. This company knew what they were doing with anything that was even remotely gritty, dark, and fantasy. I even have fond memories of playing both of these games. They even had a successful MOBA that fit the genre. But instead of innovating and expanding on it, they sold it off and decided to make a family-friendly casual MOBA. So if you're looking for 30 minutes of fun gameplay, do the tutorial, skip the bot matches, and play episode 1. That's about all the good play the game has to offer, unfortunately. Strife sought to make the second generation MOBA to take on League and Dota, but ended up making a game that does nothing to innovate the genre and ends up being stuck in a limbo between the two titans with no real identity for itself. I rate Strife a
Welcome to the trials of...
out of 10. And before I end this video, I want to do something special for all the Strife players. I don't know if it'll work, but I think it's worth a try. On March 17th, 12 p.m. PST 2024, for the whole day, or as long as we can make it last, let's get everyone online just to queue up a bunch of matches. That way, I can get a taste of how this game was meant to be played, and you guys can tell me how wrong my review was in person. I want to try to do something like this for each MOBA I review. I think it's only fair, and it would be a lot of fun. I do think this game was pretty good, but who knows? Even though this was the first game I reviewed, I don't think it was the worst. We can find worse ones than this. So thank you for watching, my friends. This was my first long-form content video, and I plan to do these weekly. So feel free to subscribe if you found it entertaining. And lastly, a shout out to the legendary Josh Strife Hayes for giving me his blessing to pursue this series for the sake of the audience. What an amazing guy. With that being said, have a wonderful day.
Welcome.